Good morning on the West Coast, good afternoon on the East Coast, and happy days everywhere in between. Today is Wednesday, June 26th, and as I always say, it's a beautiful day to have a webinar. I'm John Yerington, CEO of the Performance-Driven Marketing Institute, a 501c6 not-for-profit trade association dedicated to protecting, promoting, and advancing the direct-to-consumer and performance-driven marketing industries. And on behalf of the entire PDMI family, it's my pleasure to welcome you back for yet another fun-filled and exciting episode of the PDMI Take 20. As a reminder, the PDMI Take 20 is a quick hitting roundtable discussion led by industry experts on trending topics all in 20 minutes or less. And today we're joined by a trio of incredibly talented leaders from the industry, including Rebecca Barr of RLB Consulting, Carey Chase of Modus Direct, and Monica McLaughlin of Bluewater. And today we'll be discussing how two major events, the Olympics and the elections, will impact the media landscape in the second half of this year. However, before we get started, please allow me to do a little housekeeping. If you'd like to ask a question, we encourage you to do so. Please use the questions tab located in your control panel. Please note we'll hold all responses to the questions that you ask until the end of today's discussion. Alrighty, folks, with that said, it's my pleasure to introduce today's moderator. His mother has a tattoo on his shoulder that simply reads, "Son." He's the fearless Chris Foster. Chris is Vice President of New Business and Modern Postcard, a direct marketing agency located in Carlsbad, California. In addition to his day job, Chris teaches brand strategies at UCSD Extension courses, and he's the chairperson of the PDMI Brand Response Council. As always, Chris, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. Thank you so much. And for the 93rd time, because today's our 93rd episode. Take it away, my friend. Take it away.
Thank you, John, and happy summer to everyone. And so glad we're here. And thank you, team, for being a part of this. Yes, welcome to episode 93. Astonishing. We're keeping it going because of folks like you. And I hope that the audience here is enjoying the content that we put on, because you show up every 2 weeks, and I'm so glad and proud to actually have industry experts to deliver to you every 2 weeks. And this time we're talking about the election and Olympic spending. So the confluence of the Olympics and election is fast approaching, and I'll get cosmological, right? There's this idea of the cosmological wonder of planets aligning, right? The planets align every so often, and it's really cool. The media solar system is going to have its major event very, very soon. Can you believe July, August? I mean, July is like tomorrow, right? July, August, September, October, and October is the peak of spending, and then the early November is the actual election. We got 4 months until the election. We got 1 month until the Olympics. Whew. To start with the election, just for context, the 2022 cycle was about $9 billion in spend. The projection coming up for this upcoming cycle is going to be over 10.2. Local and national airtime is going to be really booked. CTV and fast channels are now in the mix where they weren't in the mix 4 years ago. And to that point, CTV has grown significantly since the 2022 cycle, and actually per locality and ad impact, it's surpassing digital. So some quick numbers, projecting to be 5.1 billion on broadcast, 1.9 billion on cable, 1.3 billion on CTV, edging out the 1.2 billion on digital. Can you believe that? That CTV has grown that much so quickly, and it's really going to impact the elections this time. But of course, there are also the Olympics, right? Olympics coming up hard, and they're figuring out how to handle all of the coverage, right? So Olympics.com, actually, you check it out, has launched a new Olympics Fast channel. It's going to be not necessarily the live events, but more iconic moments and other stories, kind of supplemental content. I don't think it'll affect linear and streaming ads with what's happening on NBC, and they know best. I don't know anything about that. But the fast channel for Olympics.com is probably something to pay attention to. I think it's pretty interesting. And we'll see how that plays out with the wide array of streaming and video options for this event. So we're going to talk about this opportunity. We're going to talk about who might get squeezed out of inventory, which markets might see the biggest spend, and which markets might see the biggest lift. And we've got some industry experts with us, and we're so excited to get started. So Carey, let's start with you. I know that we've been talking about this upcoming confluence for months now. What kind of conversations were you having with your clients before the beginning of the year, and what kind of conversations are you having now?
So before we were kind of just sky is falling, just be prepared, because sometimes if you just mention it, then it doesn't really resonate, and then you're in the middle of it. And so you kind of always want to under promise and over deliver. So that also works in fear. But the interesting thing, I think, kind of taking this into kind of taking the Olympics. The Olympics are, because it's in third quarter, it's, from a performance media, it's never been really a huge disruptor. This year, though, there is a little bit of a change, and it is disrupting some of the things that we've had some conversations on. And that is that right now the local affiliates are saying that they are going to be doing, like during daytime, that it's all going to be Olympics. And so we are having to shift some things off of it. It used to be that you just kind of put your head down and 2 weeks went away and then you were kind of back to normal. But this, I think, we have some clients that are in those, NBC is a big affiliate and, your budget. So you've had to have a little bit of a conversation as far as that goes. But getting to the meat of the matter, it's kind of 4 E's, and 1 E I had to try to, you want to book early, you want to make sure that you have your schedules in place. Even if things are going to change and get blown up, at least the stations at that point have an idea as far as what they need to move around or what the spending is. And it's just nice to put that flag in the ground. It's going to be expensive. That kind of goes back to the sky is falling. There's no way around it. As much as I would love to say there's some secret sauce to getting a $20 rate on a station that usually, it's going to be expensive. So you just need to prepare for that budget-wise as well as metric-wise and what that impact is. This is the one that's kind of a cheat. You need to be easygoing in the face of potential chaos. I mean, it's just one of those things where we're going to pivot. We know we have the experience of having gone through this a few more times, but having kind of a level head and just kind of expecting the unexpected is really the way to make it through. But really early and just being on top of it and moving things around as much as possible, and having a client that knows that that's what the normal is during these particular 2 years. Every 4 years.
So talking to the clients about that, I know that it's not easy to have those conversations. Are you finding that early and often education is the key to that, or are there some clients who just don't get it?
Everybody, when you're looking, they hear it, they're smart, they know what's around. But sometimes the impact, like we have clients that are in Michigan and we have clients in Florida, and it's just a different story. And there is just a lot that you don't know. 4 years ago, we thought like, oh, we'll do some long form for it. It made sense for this particular client. And then all of a sudden the station started putting in news programming in the overnights when it was usually long form. That was unexpected, but we moved the money to other stations. There's just,
sure.
And I know we're going to talk about this, but CTV has definitely been a bit of an outlet that you can kind of move money around, or you do local cable. It's just, you just have to prepare that it's, always going to be in the reports, one of those reports that has an asterisk on it, because things.
Sure, I like it. I like that idea of the asterisks. So Rebecca, what kind of campaign strategies are you recommending in this media environment?
Yeah, so to really echo exactly what Carey said, I mean, I just advise people to plan ahead and be as flexible as possible. And yes, you have to really be easygoing. That's a good one, Carey. We're going to talk about, I think in a little bit, there's also AEP at work here. So the planning ahead is really essential. If it's going to be a burden on your business, if second half of the year is really seasonally important, I would recommend some guaranteed placements. You don't need to break the budget doing it, but laying in some guaranteed placements, because that's still going to give you that reach that lifts your other channels on the digital side. And Carey also mentioned, like, you can shift into local cable. There are places to pivot, but it's going to be a choppy road in the local markets.
Roger. No, that makes a lot of sense. So I guess you're just talking about that choppy road and some of the limited availability on linear. So Monica, how does that limited availability on linear does it help you be more creative with clients and where they could put budget? Does it help you be more, experimental? Does, necessity become the mother of invention in this type of environment?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've been through the political years, we've been through Olympic years, so we know this. We've navigated the limited inventory before, and you've heard, Carey or Rebecca saying being prepared and thinking a little outside the box, and it really comes to creating diversified media and creative mix, even within the linear space. And as performance marketers, we are constantly exploring all channels, and we're adjusting budgets based on the changes that we see, which we know will rapidly change week to week as we move through the second half of this year, particularly in October, which, as you mentioned, a big spend month. But using direct buying disciplines, it allows us to be flexible, which is so great. We can move those budget, reallocate across different networks, day parts, outlets. And as we we observe results, we'll be able to make those changes and talk to our clients about that. So we constantly update them about the new opportunities, whether it's in linear, OTT, and digital, aligned with performance as well, and kind of move those around as we need to.
That's great. It must be then you must be in touch with your clients even more. I mean, does the communication elevate in terms of the frequency and the sense of pace?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as we move to a different time of year for certain clients that are very crucial, and keeping them informed and up to date on what we're seeing and what we're doing is really important when we look at their, driving their business forward.
Sure, that's great. You just mentioned CTV, Monica, and I want to, Carey, ask you, the CT base clearly is growing. There seems to be more room for brands to market into this space. There seems to be a greater opportunity if they're willing to test it out, even with CPMs they might not be used to. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, no, it's an area that you can definitely navigate, and we are working, just almost daily on finding new platforms, the fast channels. There's more competition. That's a great thing for performance marketers because it just kind of starts to take the air out of some of the walled gardens, and if you don't want to spend it there, then I can find places. So, but yes, and you kind of referenced at the top of the call that as far as political spending, that they are going to eat it up, because you can not only target the audience that you're looking for. And as we know, if you're just, a casual viewer of news, I mean, you have those people that are just, that's where all that data is coming from. So they can focus on that, and they can geo-target. So that might relieve a little bit. I expect that, they were at 12% in 2022. I would say that I wouldn't be surprised if it was 15, maybe even 20%, which would equate to 1.5 or even $2 billion in spend kind of getting out. So that might actually be some good news for direct marketers. Direct marketers as a whole, we're looking at it, and I think that, the way that we go about it is looking at CPMs and trying to find the absolute lowest, and kind of taking the same kind of broad appeal approach, and then finding the pockets that work, and then kind of leveraging those for what you need to do for each particular client.
Yeah, we had a conversation with a terrific guy on Take 20, focused on CTV for political, because it can be so highly targeted. And it's one of the advantages of it. And the other thing that's happening too is that the targeting comes into play really in those 5 to 8 battleground states. And I think that everyone has seen that, conventional wisdom and the data shows the election is going to be won in 5+ states. That's where it is, right? But also at the time in October is AEP, right? and open enrollment and Medicare Advantage. So that's kind of a burden, because some of those voters are also those folks who are actually in the Medicare Advantage space right now. And they're the ones watching television, right? So these local markets are going to be flooded. That's going to be a challenge. I think, Rebecca, why don't you talk about that? Because you had brought that up earlier in the conversation.
Yeah, so that is an extra layer here that's probably a bigger problem for us than the Olympics really are. And to Monica's point, like, you got to optimize everything across day parts and such. And we've talked already about just pivoting. it is, I go back to, you know, some guaranteed placement if you can. Carey talked about local cable. Carey, I think that's an excellent point too, about some of the money shifting to the fast channels and streaming because it's highly targetable. Not that we can't also move over there, and this isn't a negative, it's just to highlight this. You know, moving budget from linear to connected or the fast channels, it's not one-to-one. It's not the same impact. So, you know, we do need linear in terms of the reach that it brings for everything else, for all of your other channels. On the streaming side, it's really great for its targetability, but you're not going to get the same sales lift. So just to understand that. Also being flexible in terms of your spot length will give you a little bit of an advantage in the marketplace. It's not the magic bullet, but you know, 120s are going to be almost non-existent. You won't be able to get them. 60s will also be very difficult to clear. If you have a 30 and a 15, it gives you a lot more options just in terms of, you know, where you can go, where you can pivot to. The max length for local cable is a 60, and that's the same for streaming. Not that a lot of people do 60s, but you know, that gives you another opportunity just to be able to pivot. You know, we said it at the top, it's just really being as flexible as possible. And you know, Monica said it too, like you really ought to be like a cat in terms of you know, optimizing everything, because it just will change day to day.
Sure.
To piggyback on that, there's another layer within the AEP world that is going to add. So the last 15 years or so, AEP has grown from kind of an HMO for seniors to really kind of how a lot of people experience Medicare insurance. And that particular customer base has become a bit more savvy. But it's still a government-related product, and I will not get too wonky. The government is basically starting to pull back a little bit on that. They're kind of toward the end of the baby boomers, so they've seen kind of the height of the volume, and they're not giving the providers as much money. And that has started, as we have been planning early, that has had a different impact on some of the clients. And had one client, small client, but they actually are thinking that they may pull off of TV because we've kind of scared the bejesus out of them on the rate situation. But they're also kind of looking at it as, hey, you know, we have other ways of doing it, and maybe, you know, now is not the time, because they're not going to be able to have, compared to last year, some perhaps, and the plans don't come out until October 1st. So this is all very speculative, but one thing that's true is that the plans for this year may not be as lucrative as they were in years past. And so you have to think about the messaging and what you're going to be doing. So that's putting an added pressure on AEP as a whole, that the plans themselves are not going to be growing in the way that they have in a year that's already difficult to begin with.
Yeah, that's a challenge. It's a challenge on top of a challenger, like from the movie Brazil, the complications have a complication. So Monica, you had mentioned earlier about October being a big month for spend. We know that, especially for linear. And Carey, you had mentioned before when some of your clients just put their head in the sand and ride out the Olympics for 2 weeks and then pop it up and be like, okay, now I'm back. But a month is a long time to heal out and not be in. So are you recommending that they lean into more digital, that they ride out and save budget for November? Because it's a lot, and especially October is a big holiday prep month, right? I mean, that's like the spend for holiday retail. What are you recommending?
I call it in even non-political years, like the Bermuda Triangle of direct response. Like, you know, political, you've got retail, you've got open enrollment, all of these things happening coming into October. And, you know, you say that clients might pull back, or they may just ride the storm. And, you know, there's studies out there that show if you do ride out the storm without pulling back, as you emerge from it, or like, you know, that you're stronger. So it's interesting, but it all comes down to the client goals on what they're trying to achieve. So when we think about strategies that we talk to our clients, it's really going to depend on, again, those unique goals and how we can pull different levers across all the outlets and kind of pull through October and into November and still, you know, hitting those goals and pushing the campaign forwards.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think that, you know, and the Bermuda Triangle is a wonderful analogy because A, it's unknown, but B, you also know it's there, right? So it's well, you know it's there. The
Yes.
actual event inside of it is still unknown.
Yep, absolutely. And it's being persistent through it. And like I said, you can see that
Right.
clients will have an increased share, increased awareness, and stronger response in some of those studies.
If they just get through it, that's true.
Yep.
So I guess I'll do a final question for all of you. We know we talked all this episode about the impact that it's going to have, but beyond just the direct response, do you think generally businesses are adjusting their spending decisions for marketing for this year because of all of this? Is there uncertainty about the upcoming, you know, economic environment? Is there kind of a wait and see approach, or are you finding clients are generally just saying, hey, we've got to be in it, we've got to play? I guess, Monica, I'll start with you and then we'll go around.
I think it's depending on the client, and some of our clients we speak to this, it's you got to be in it. We're going to keep moving forward. I think it comes down to looking at the data and the performance and the metrics, and we're being asked more and more to see what that looks like as we go into the back half of this year and even planning into next year as well. So it's really come down to the data and the performance.
Mm-hmm. Rebecca, what do you think?
Yeah, it's very similar to that I've been having discussions with. I've talked to clients that have front loaded the year with their budget in the first half where they can. But again, if you have a product that is your seasonality is in the second half of the year, you don't have a choice. But also to Monica's point, just really like planning what you can. Obviously the first half is behind us, but even looking ahead into 2025, which hurts to say out loud, but you know, really understanding that, because you can't make it happen and it will become cost prohibitive. So a lot of the clients that I've been engaging with, they are really aware of it, and they have been trying to flex where they could and not really over relying on the second half of the year.
Interesting. Carey, want to wrap it up?
Yep, very similar to what Rebecca and Monica both shared. Like I said, we have one client, but that was more of a messaging. I think that nobody is really scared politically. And I often kind of think like way back 2008, or even some of the financial crises that we've gone through, those people that have kind of that stayed on and were able to take advantage even in the pandemic, you know, they benefited from that. And I think that that's also something to kind of share with some of our clients, that pulling out and kind of being a Chicken Little is usually not better for the long term. And you just have to kind of put those asterisks or realize, know that is, but be smart about it. And what Monica says, read the data and then know that 2015 is, you know, one of those easier years, right?
Right.
I can't say it. I have to go back 10 years.
Right. I know you went back in time. I think 2015 was an easier year.
2015 was, right.
I think if we look back, that seemed to be an easier year, but hopefully 2025 is an easier year too. What's interesting to me is that the general message, though, I think then that has persisted, is that if you don't market and you're out of the game, you're going to suffer and you're not going to be able to grow. Right? Continuing to market even in tougher times or getting through the stormy sea of a Bermuda Triangle is sometimes the only way through, so your brand can continue to grow and thrive. Johnny, I think that's a fantastic Take 20. Come on back. We'll get some questions from the audience.
The pipeline for questions have been flowing. I got a couple of interesting ones for the gang. Let's start with a programmatic style question. Advertisers are able to bid programmatically on the Olympic Games for the first time as they are streaming on Peacock. Assuming programmatic ad revenue is strong for the games, do you think we'll see a push to migrate more live sports to streaming to the streaming arena in the future?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I think we will. You know, that's sports and news have been kind of the last holdout for live eyeballs on linear TV. And I think that, you know, some of the streamers you see it, you know, the NFL's moving, who knows where the NBA is going to move. So I think you will see it.
Yeah, it's
Agreed.
inevitable.
All right, great answer. Thank you. Let's move to a brand safety style question. This one's interesting. Negative political advertising can provoke negative emotions in viewers, and those feelings can have detrimental impact on how consumers perceive brands who run ads alongside them. Any thoughts on how to avoid adjacency placement to political ads during this season?
No.
That's tough one.
I mean, the only way to do it is like, is what a tactic that I probably, everybody, you know, there are certain stations that we just don't advertise on all. That's the only way to avoid it. You know, and that type of, you know, political. So, you know, you're going to see some of the DigiNets and the MeTVs and the antennas and those types of things, and they do really well actually, because I think kind of to that point. But it's, you know, TV is different from digital, where you can kind of do those safety approaches. This is you can try, but it's a full zero.
One thing that I would just add there is it's a little bit of a pivot away from the political ads, but you know, sometimes you encounter it like with the news, you know, and there'll be like negative coverage because it's going to be a crazy news cycle. Some of the news outlets will go a split screen where they'll still have the video playing and they'll run your ad. You know, in the past, we have just requested that we don't run in a split screen scenario. There's kind of a well-documented Applebee's kerfuffle at the beginning of the Ukraine war. So that's one thing. You can't really, you know, as Carey said, you can not run in some of those places, but if you're running on news, you might request to not run on the split screen.
Great feedback. Thank you so much. We touched on this question kind of throughout today's conversation, but I want to drill down on it a little bit. One of our viewers asked this: how do you think these events, the Olympics and the political elections, will impact the national linear media?
I'm sorry, John, what will impact the linear media?
How do you think the Olympics and the elections will impact national linear media?
National is always a little bit, you know, it's bigger for the general election. Former President Trump did not spend a ton in the last go around, and I would anticipate that it's, you know, they're going to focus more on those 8/5 states. So I don't think that the impact is as heavy as it is on the local. It will still be there. One thing that we also didn't really talk about, issue money. So that's also going to be very much at the local level. You know, there may be some super PAC money that they just try to get messaging as a whole, because it's because of the efficiencies. As we all know, national cable in particular is the most efficient way to go in general. So I hope I'm not telling people to do that when
Yeah.
that's another area that I'd like to keep a little bit safe. Yeah.
To kind of piggyback off this too, we're talking about inventory availability at the national level, but also viewership. We can see that change when we look at performance in our data, if we're heavy on NBC or if we're not, and where that viewership might shift. So your results may look different depending on that period. So people are tuning into news or they're watching the Olympics.
Right, that makes sense.
All great feedback. Thank you so much. Let's round this out with one kind of fun question. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but what's your favorite Olympic event?
Swimming.
Can I pick two?
I know Chris. Can I answer for Chris? He's going to say all things swimming.
That's correct. The swimming, absolutely, and I love track. God, I love track and field. Swimming and track and field for me.
That's me. And track and field, 100, 200, 400. God, those are exciting.
That's right.
Yeah. I'm very similar on those fronts with the swimming and the track. And Reagan Smith is the stepdaughter of somebody from my high school class, which is extraordinary because there's 19 people in my high school class.
Hands down gymnastics.
Oh, nice. That's a good
Gymnastics is great. It's great. In fact, I'm kind of an Olympics junkie. Even in the Winter Olympics, I'm like, oh, curling's on. Awesome. Just cheering away, you know. It's just how it goes. Well, let me come back.
Do you have a favorite?
I do. I love a relay. I ran track, so the 4x100 relay is just one of the most, because the baton, you can be as fast as you want, but if you still mess up that baton twist, it's it's crazy. And I love, my niece is now into swimming, so you kind of have that, you have the relays. I just think there's nothing better than individual sports, but then when you add a team element to it, it just makes it so much more exciting.
And you know what? I love that. And Carey, I love what they added was the mixed gender relays. I think that's so cool, especially for the swimming. And it's strategic. Who's going to do what stroke? I just think it's great.
Like, yeah.
Well, great job, Rebecca, Carey, Monica, Chris. What a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here and sharing your wisdom and expertise and experience with us all. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. Before we close out, I'd like to take a moment to invite you all to join us for our next episode of the PDMI Take 20, which is hosted on July 11th. Yes, folks, July 11th, halfway through the year at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Also, both registration for the PDMI Fall Conference, PDMI West, scheduled for October 7th and 9th in San Diego at the Hard Rock Hotel, is now open. And there's no better way to support the PDMI events than purchasing your badges and staying on site at the hotel. To get your attendee badges and make your room reservation, visit thepdmi.com. That's thepdmi.com. Great to have you all with us today. Thanks again, panelists. Make it a great day, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.